Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Yuan Bo, the latest legendary lord of Grand Cathay, coming with Shadows of Change in both Realms of Chaos and Immortal Empires. There's quite a few things to unpack with this DLC, but I would say one of the more important things to mention about Yuan Bo, based on the gameplay reveal, is that it doesn't seem that he has a fundamental change to the way Grand Cathay plays, though based on what we see, he is likely going to be the far better legendary lord than Miao Ying or Xiao Ming. It comes down to a number of effects. He doesn't have to deal with harmony, for instance, so I'll get into that in just a moment, but I didn't see the harmony meter or the harmony icon within the trailer or the gameplay reveal that they made of him. At least I personally couldn't notice it. Maybe it is there, maybe we just don't know, but I couldn't spot it. And that is certainly a very beneficial situation. Though, of course, he's trading away all the benefits that come from balanced harmony and all the annoyances that come from having to deal with harmony for his own matters of state mechanic. So there's pros and cons with that, though I think based on what we saw with Matters of State that he is going to become far more powerful. Now, starting positions, because they did reveal the starting positions on Twitter. They also talked about them in the trailer, and it is as you might expect. He does start in the Celestial Riverlands. I kind of expected to some extent that he could have started in Wei Jin, but no, he's going to start in the Celestial Riverlands in both Realms of Chaos and Immortal Empires. So here's where he starts in Realms of Chaos. Not really too important to talk about Realms of Chaos. The vast majority of people don't care about Realms of Chaos. But Immortal Empires, he starts in this corner, in the bottom left corner of the Celestial Riverlands province in Immortal Empires. Now, this is a minor settlement in Immortal Empires currently. Now, this could be changed for the sake of Shadows of Change, but we don't know this for certain. If things stay as they are, starting with a minor settlement is not necessarily a downside, because if you start with a minor settlement and you do have like the unit recruitment structure, the basic military structure there, that's actually a benefit because you don't have to then reconstruct it. Like if you start with a major settlement like Miao Ying, and you obviously are going to want to recruit units, so you're not going to get rid of it instantly. You're going to want to recruit units, you're going to want to upgrade the structure, and then you're going to want to get rid of it because you have more useful stuff to make from your provincial capital. That is the problem. Like, generally speaking, I would argue that factions that start with a minor settlement actually end up being more powerful than factions with a proper provincial capital, because it's easy enough to capture a settlement early on in your campaign. I imagine that in Immortal Empires in Grand Cathay, he's likely going to have either greenskins or the vampires that are in the Nongchang Basin at the moment. They're going to have control over most of the Celestial Riverlands, and Grand Cathay is quite ideally suited towards wiping them out very quickly. He does start also pretty close to Snitch, so you might want to go for Snitch as quickly as possible, because the thing with Skaven is if you let Skaven develop, that's when they become a problem. Like if you strike Skaven hard and fast early on, yes, they'll have a lot of Skaven slaves and clan rats, but if you eliminate Snitch's main settlement within the first couple of turns over here from the Celestial Riverlands, you'll deal him a fatal blow, especially since Snitch only starts with that settlement and he doesn't have a provincial capital, so his unit recruitment and his hero recruitment is going to be neutered. That's just some of the things to keep in mind. But his main campaign focus is going to be in Lustria. It isn't unexpected, I didn't mention this in the video that I did about Yuan Bo previously, that I did kind of expect him to have a dual start, and he does have a dual start. What kind of choices we will have with regards to that start, and like in terms of similar choices to what Elfarian or Malice Darkblade have, what kind of choices we will have with Yuan Bo remains unclear, but he does have his main army starting in Lustria, and his main campaign objectives are going to be in Lustria. Interesting thing to note is that his campaign objectives, which require him to build 4 separate, take over 4 special settlements, build a structure there, defend it against hordes of lizardmen, That is the same in both Realms of Chaos and Immortal Empire, so it seems that the story content, at least based on what we saw in that gameplay reveal, is also going to be present not just in Realms of Chaos, but also in Immortal Empires. This was one of the downsides of the Forge of the Chaos Dwarves. Realms of Chaos sucks, so having those mechanics at the very least in Immortal Empires would be very beneficial. I would argue that having a toggle on whether or not you want to have like all the quest battles, all the story battles in Immortal Empires would be welcome at the beginning of a campaign, like, you know, just play the story a couple of times and just focus on the sandbox of Immortal Empires. But still, it is a welcome development, regardless of how they do it. The fact that they are doing it in the first place is certainly a very welcome development. And his starting position over here in Lustra, just to talk about this, he's going to start that war with the Blue Vipers in the swamps, and the Blue Vipers also have 2 settlements in the jungles, at least currently. He starts between Mazdamundi and Marcus Wolfhard. Now, he's likely going to be able to get good relations with Marcus Wolfhard, and he's going to end up at war with Mazdamundi. But here's the thing about Mazdamundi. Mazdamundi is a pushover who has a really brutal starting position, and that means it takes Mazdamundi quite a bit of time to build up his strength. If you allow Mazdamundi to build up his strength, he can become faction strength number 1. In fact, this is something that happens in quite a lot of campaigns. Like if I play a campaign as Moravian, I trade Mazdamundi some territory to have an alliance with him, he becomes one of the most powerful and dominant factions in the game, and a really powerful ally. So I'm guessing this particular decision with this dual start is to try and limit to some extent Mazdamundi's end-game potential, and also potentially to limit Marcus Wolfhard. It remains to be seen how things are going to unfold when you're not playing Yuan Bo, if he is also going to start with an army here and have that dual start, or if he's just going to start with his army in the Celestial Riverlands. If he does start with his army in the Celestial Riverlands, and you're playing a Snitch, you might just want to rush the Celestial Riverlands as quickly as possible, because Xiao Ming is already a problem playing a Snitch. And now if you have 2 Legendary Lords of Grand Cathay to deal with, both of which are going to be very hostile for you, towards you as Snitch, you're probably going to want to wipe one of those out, or both of them out, as quickly as possible. So instead of heading east as Snitch and then north to take Kunlan, you might just want to ignore the Greenskins there, just leave a defensive force if need be, but head south as quickly as possible to wipe out the Celestial Riverlands, or at least wipe out Yuan Bo. Now, for the Lizardmen, this would be a nightmare if they have to deal with him. Like if you're playing a campaign as Mazdamundi and you have to deal with Yuan Bo, well, playing a campaign as Mazdamundi is already a pain in the neck. But the thing about Grand Cathay is they're kind of ideally suited towards countering the Lizardmen early game, especially. Because what is the Lizardmen early game? It's Skinks and it's Saurus. Well, the thing about Skinks, they stand no chance against the Jade Warriors. And as for Saurus, they can handle Jade Warriors, the infantry, but not the crossbowmen. Because those crossbowmen are going to tear Saurus to shreds. Because Saurus, they're decent units. They have a good amount of leadership, they have a good amount of armor, but Grand Cathay has halberds that can get pretty quickly to hold a line against them. And it has crossbows to deal with virtually everything that the Lizardmen throw against them. Hey, you got the Lord like Mazdamundi coming into the fray? No problem. Make him a pincushion for all your crossbows. So I imagine playing a campaign as Yuan Bo, that eliminating Mazdamundi, making an alliance with Marcus Wolfhard, taking over that entire territory to the north, making some kind of deal with Marathi would be in your best interest. But beyond that, going south, dealing with the Dark Elves, continuing that alliance with Marcus Wolfhard, dealing with Regarve, conquering all of Lustria might be in your interest. Depends on the settlements that you need to actually take in order to do your rituals. And speaking about those rituals, they are based on what the Wood Elf rework was about. So here we go again with another type, with a similar mechanic as the Wood Elves have, where they have to take the trees, they have to construct some buildings, and then they have to, or just do growth, and then they can construct buildings after they've done the ritual, but while they're doing the ritual, they have to deal with a bunch of rogue armies. Now, here's the reason why Yuan Bo may very well be the most powerful legendary lord of Grand Cathay. Not based on his mechanics, though those do seem to be pretty strong themselves, but purely based on one thing: climate. See, climate suitability is far more important for the strength of a legendary lord than faction than you might realize. Look at Grom the Punch, a really powerful legendary lord, but his campaign is limited because he does start with a bunch of unsuitable climate next to him. And that is a problem. And if that's a problem for someone like Grom, you can imagine how it is for someone like Xiao Ming or Miao Ying when it comes to dealing with their campaigns. And for Yuan Bo, in Immortal Empires, he's going to start in a jungle. That means he's going to be able to colonize the jungle, I have to assume. And based on his campaign objectives in Realms of Chaos, he might also be able to colonize the Darklands, because one of those campaign objectives is in the Darklands. If that ends up being the case, then he will be quite a bit more powerful, because he will have a lot more territory that he can take and develop for a far cheaper cost than what Xiao Ming and Miao Ying have to deal with in their respective campaigns. Then, of course, you do have the matters of state mechanics. So you have steel actions and you have stone actions that you can take using those tokens at the top. Certain actions require, or at least one steel action does require seven tokens. And then you do have balance actions that require both tokens, 3 of each. So you can either battle harmony, supremacy, or command the lesser courts. Those are the 2 balanced actions that you do have available for him. Now, these do include certain things like declaring a certain city a fortress or a commercial district, restructuring harmony, commissioning the artisan, rushing constructions. So you do have various options over here that will give you a significant amount of power. The way I see this is a further development on the schemes that Snitch does have. This does seem to be inspired based on the schemes that we've seen for Snitch, or for Cao Cao, really, if you want to go into Free Kingdoms, which I'm pretty certain that Creative Assembly has certainly looked at Free Kingdoms for some of the mechanics that they're using here with Cathay, at the very least. So there's a huge amount of power over here with regards to what you can do, like replenishing movement, rushing construction, commercial district for greater power. And we did see early on in the trailer, in the first few seconds of the trailer, that he was meeting ambassadors or lords of various races, order races around the campaign map. How that will play out in the campaign remains to be seen. Now, furthermore, what people have noticed is the harmony icon, but not on a faction level, as we do have for Xiao Ming and Miao Ying, but on a settlement level, likely a province level. So balancing harmony might be something that at least Yuan Bo is going to be doing on a provincial level. Now, this has its benefits and its negatives. It does mean that you're no longer getting that enormous buff as you do currently have in the game, but also removes the tedium of having to deal with research, having to deal with lords. If it's just a settlement aspect where you have to balance it on a settlement level as opposed to dealing with it on a faction level, that makes it far easier to manage, I think, and far less tedious. But you do lose those bonuses because you're no longer going to have them on a faction-wide level. Though, from a practical standpoint, you likely will. And also, you might not care as much about the downsides, because having balanced harmony in the game, if you're currently playing Cathay, is so important for your success, because it gives you so many faction-wide benefits, army ability, etc. That is quite crucial at the moment. I'm curious to see how what they'll do with armies. If you do need to maintain balanced armies, I think that would be pretty damn annoying, but we do see, at least with settlements, that this is the case. Now, looking at the whooshing compass, there are further options that you can unlock by capturing those special settlements, constructing those buildings, dealing with the hordes of lizardmen. But there are also certain things that have been changed or added to it, like the Nongchang Basin, reducing construction cost and crucially construction time by -1 for all buildings in Cathayan-owned regions. This will significantly improve your empire by allowing you to construct everything much faster. Some things have stayed the same, but yeah, Nongchang Basin is going to be pretty powerful. I do appreciate the fact that they changed some things around, because Celestial Lake would have otherwise, like, having growth and income to the same thing would have been pretty ridiculous, as I see it. But yeah, you do get an experience benefit, you do get the control benefit, you get corruption benefit, which, honestly, the corruption benefit doesn't really matter considering the way corruption works. And then, yes, you have the Great Bastion. I probably would start with the Great Bastion for that casualty replenishment early on, because having casualty replenishment early on is quite important, because it allows you to take riskier and riskier battles and win those battles. Yes, it is ideal to fight them manually, but fighting them manually, taking those risks, winning more and more battles, capturing a lot of territory. You want to know how you succeed in a Total War campaign? You try and achieve as much as possible, as quickly as possible. No turtling, no passive playstyle. Go as hard and as fast as possible. Sometimes it does pay off to wait, to take it more slowly, or to not take those risks, but many times it is far better. And that's where the Great Bastion comes in, at least in the early game, especially because passive benefit. So when you switch the compass to something else, you still keep that casualty replenishment to a certain degree when you do switch the compass to something else. And that is all that there is to say about Yuan Bo for the moment. He does seem like he is going to be a fairly powerful legendary lord. I am curious to see what's going to happen with the rest of Cathay. If they do change the harmony system for all legendary lords of Cathay, not just Yuan Bo, then I think that will make Cathay more playable. I think it would help Cathay a great deal if, in general, they all benefited from that kind of harmony system and more climate options. Like if it wasn't just Yuan Bo that could, colonize jungles without any negative consequences for that, that would significantly improve Cathay campaigns. If it's just Yuan Bo that gets extra climate types and Xiaoming and Miaoying stay the same, then I'll be blunt about it. Playing a campaign as them is just going to feel like a worse experience. It's going to be a far more limited campaign with them. Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more because, well, apparently, based on what some other YouTubers are saying, that footage will become available very shortly. See you next time.